Hi, everyone. I'm Lou Sabino. I'm Director of Admission and Financial Aid here at Overlake, and I want to welcome you to another OWLS Talk. Tonight, the topic is upper school, and so we've got two people with us today. We've got Gerald Haley, who's our upper school head, and Krishna Davda is our assistant upper school head. And so they are here to tell you a little bit about the upper school program, generally speaking, and then answer any questions that you have tonight. So before I turn it over to them, just want to give you a couple things for those of you who haven't been to one of these OWLS talks. This is, we're doing this live, and so you can ask questions live, and you should see on the right-hand side of your screen a place where you can type in questions. And so those will come directly to us, and I'll read questions as they come throughout the evening. So any questions you have about really anything related to the upper school program, or if you have admissions questions, that kind of thing, I'm happy to answer those as well. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Gerald. Hi, Gerald.
Thanks, Lou. Hello, everybody. I'm Gerald Haley, head of the upper school at Overlake. Thanks so much for giving us your time today. I'm happy that you were able to have some interest here in Overlake. A little bit about me before I have Krishna introduce himself. This is my 14th year at Overlake. Full transparency, both of my children graduated from Overlake. They are proud alums. My son graduated in 2013 and my daughter in 2015. She was a lifer, which means that she spent 8 years at Overlake. I tell you that because one of the things that I often say is that being an administrator of a school, having my children at my school was the best professional development that I ever went through. And so, you know, I can talk about Overlake not only with the perspective of being a principal of the high school, but also as a parent who had both of my children successfully matriculate and go off to college. So we're going to have a number of pieces of information for you, but first I wanted to introduce Krishna as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to have this opportunity. This is actually the first one of these I'm doing because I'm new here at Overlake. So I have been one of those intrepid souls who have decided to change employment and join a wonderful new institution in the middle of a pandemic. So I'll be able to talk a lot about like how we've adjusted to this particular current context, and we'll look to support from my fellow colleagues here, Lou and Gerald, to talk a little bit more about what in-person school looks like, because I know that's what we're really interested in learning about the longer term, right? Like being an OWL and ultimately an alumnus. So look forward to really having the opportunity to engage with you all. Thank you for having me.
So the way that this will be structured is that I'll give you a little bit of background about the school, the culture of the school, and Krishna will do that as well. And then we'll answer some of the questions. There's been a few questions that were pre-sent to us, and so we'll have an opportunity to answer some of those, and then also open it up to further questions from you as parents. I think that I think back to about, like I said, 14 years ago when I was looking at schools, and I've always been quite curious about what it is that attracts families to schools, what it is that keeps families at schools. And, you know, one of the things that the research shows is that if you rank all of the things that you know, people are interested in, the academic program is not number one. The buildings, the facilities, the location, that's not number one. So what is it that really drives parents and drives students towards schools? It's really simple, actually. It comes down to happiness. What is it? What is the location? What is the school? What is the place, the community where your child will be engaged, active, involved, and bottom line, happy for 4 years or longer? And so, you know, it's happiness is you'd think would be hard to measure, but in a school, it's actually not that hard to measure. And what I do as an administrator, and I'm looking at schools, the two numbers that I'm really interested in is attrition of students and retention of faculty. And so if you look at attrition of students at independent schools across the nation, the attrition number averages around 9% of kids that leave independent schools across the nation. At Overlake, that number every year, year in and year out, is right around 3%. And what that tells you at 3%, that's really families that are moving out of the area. And it tells you that when kids come here, they stay because they're happy, they're engaged, they're committed, and the families stay obviously as well. The other measure that I said that we look at is we look at faculty tenure. And at this school, the faculty tenure is really high. It's above 10 years, it's about 12 years for our faculty. What that means as well is that, you know, those teachers that your kids hear about in the high school, they hear about as freshmen, that these teachers that are teaching these senior electives, they're going to be around, right? They're going to be there teaching those classes for the students. And it also is really important in terms of our sense of community, that faculty, the adults in the community stay, the students stay, and that is the healthiest environment that you can have for a community. Now, why does that happen? Well, part of that is about the culture of our school. It is a community, it's a really strong community. And there's three aspects that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the culture of achievement, the culture of involvement, and the culture of relationships. Those are the three really clear aspects of the school that make this place tick, right? That make Overlake the school that it is. So in terms of achievement, I'm going to talk about that, and Krishna is going to talk about involvement and relationships. In terms of achievement, academic excellence is important to our students. Our students are all on a trajectory for college. They're on a college path. They all do their homework. It's cool to be smart at Overlake. They work hard, they're engaged, they do their homework, and they support each other. Right? We don't have a scenario where students are, there's only a certain number of students who can get a 95% in a class. Everybody works hard. They like to see other students that are successful, and they help each other. And that's, again, really important. When you look at a classroom, you'll often see that the desks are arranged in a horseshoe so that students can be engaged with each other. They're part of the lesson. They're part of the conversation. We are, as a school, the curriculum has tremendous balance. I often will say we're not a STEM school, because a STEM school focuses specifically on technology and those courses. We have a fantastic technology departments. Our math and science curriculum, computer science curriculum is awesome. But we're also fantastic in the arts and in the humanities and in all the other areas of a student's education. And so, what I've found with my own children, I think of my daughter when she graduated from Overlake. She had students who had tremendous skills in a wide variety of areas. So for instance, she had her classmates that went to computer science departments, direct admit into the UW computer science department. She had classmates who went to tech universities. She also had classmates who went to the Rhode Island School of Design. She had classmates who went to the Tisch School at NYU. So this is it's a wide range of abilities which brings a school together. It enriches the community by having all those students of different strengths within our school. We have small class sizes, right? Average 14 kids in a classroom. You don't get lost. There's no way to sit in the back of the room. I think of the class right now that Krishna and I are co-teaching, which is a leadership and ethics class. We have 15 kids in there. We can see them all on the screen together, in the class, and engage with each of those students. When your children come to Overlake, we fully expect and plan for us not to be online in the fall of 2021, that we will be back like we were in the fall of 2019. So what you'll notice is that when I talk about the culture of achievement, I don't start with numbers. And I think that for numbers are important, but I leave that to the end of what I like to say about our culture of achievement. It's much more than numbers at our school. However, I do want to give you a few numbers here before I turn it over to Krishna, which is, if we look at our standardized test scores as an example, our kids average over 700 on each of those sections. The ACT average is over 30 for our kids. We are an AP school. We offer between 15 and 18 APs every year. Our kids, 83% of our scores are 5s and 4s from our classes. College admissions, fit is our focus. We are really wanting to have the right fit. My daughter went to a really strong liberal arts school. It was the perfect fit for her. And so if we look at the number of seniors, we usually have about 75 seniors. About 68 to 70% of them go to selective or highly selective universities. They average around $10 million in scholarships. 86% go out of state or in that range. About 60% of our kids go to private universities. They apply to, on average, around 12, although that number is going up these days. And they usually get into 6 to 8 of those 12 that they apply to. But again, my point that I go back to begin with is that it is not necessarily the curriculum or the college placements that brings kids to the school. It's the fact that they are happy and content and that they stay for their entire career at Overlake. And I'm now going to turn it over to Krishna, and he's going to talk about a little bit more about our involvement and our relationships.
Thank you, Gerald. So the other two aspects that Gerald mentioned, right, is the culture of involvement and the culture of relationships. Our culture of involvement really begins, or perhaps maybe doesn't end at the end of the class day, right? Our students often engage in what we refer to as co-curricular rather than extracurricular programs, and it's an important distinction. We have a slate of co-curricular activities that rival many larger schools in terms of enrollment. And to support this, we need kids willing to put themselves out there in multiple ways. So here at Overlake, we don't have a lot of specialists, but we do have a lot of students who are willing to take the risks to learn more about their interests and, dig deeper, engage in activities where they're really exploring perhaps ultimately what will become a future career path, hobby, life integrated aspect that will hope to serve them well. We have a very successful and competitive athletics program that all students are able to be a part of. In fact, 75 to 80% of both middle school and upper school students play a sport. At our varsity event at the end of the year, for example, we do not name a male or a female athlete of the year, but rather we honor an entire group of students who have earned a varsity letter in all 3 seasons, right? Fall, winter, and spring. Our upper school program is student driven, and this first semester we have approximately 40 different student driven clubs and non-athletic teams such as speech and debate or robotics. These clubs are not required for upper school students, but out of the 300 plus students, only around 15 to 20, right, are not in at least one club this quarter. Offerings range from cooking, business, robotics, programming, improv, right? The multitude of options continue to grow, and it really is a student-driven program. So if the program does not currently exist, a student simply needs to suggest it and get a monicum of student interest and support, and off they go. Great opportunities also exist in our service learning and outdoor ed programs. We believe so much in these programs that we've actually added graduation requirements and created an experiential ed department. the leadership and ethics course that Gerald mentioned we both co-teach actually comes from this department, because we see, the focus on creating a holistic form of education to be really critical. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the culture of relationships. Students in the upper school are on a first name basis with teachers and administrators. As I mentioned, I recently came here from another school, and prior to that, I was at a school where we were on a first name basis. The relationship difference that I am able to experience here at Overlake, because we have that more on a peer level, a level of respect where we treat faculty and students coming to the table and really just having that foundation of trust and respect, and we see that returned by the students, right? They seem to be willing to engage with us more, seek help more than my former place where we were on a Mr. Davda, for example, would be how I was termed back there, and it's really palpable in regards to that. The other huge crux of our relationships programming, and has really become pivotal as we've moved to this Overlake online model for the current world context, is our advisory program. So every student is assigned to an advisory that is grade level based. And so they would be with a group of students, typically around 8 to 10 students from their grade. And they're assigned that from the moment that they enter Overlake, and will continue in that exact group of students through to graduation in the upper school. In the middle school, we tend to change it around, but in the upper school, once you're in an advising group, you have that advisor who makes a 4-year commitment to be with those students, as well as those students for the length of your program. So this continues to facilitate deeper and more meaningful relationships, because they're talking about not just how they were over, say, perhaps the coming Thanksgiving break, but they're also checking in post the summer break, right? And hey, how is that transition to the next year? How's everybody doing? Those kinds of things really deepen the experience and the relationships, and creates that sense of trust, openness. So when students who, as adolescents, are expected to have opportunities for learning and growth, and perhaps err from time to time, right? The comfort level to seek help, from that advisor or perhaps a teacher that they have a great relationship with, seems to be one of the really foundational aspects of Overlake that I really appreciate in the short time that I've been here. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So I want to make sure we open it up to questions for those of you who are watching. And just a reminder, if you have questions for these two, you can you should see a box on the right hand side. You just type in the question and it'll come directly to us, and we can ask them. The first question I have, and Gerald, maybe you might be the person to address this, is around balance. So can you talk a little bit about how students in the upper school are able to balance their academic life, their extracurriculars or co-curriculars, excuse me, the many other things that they're doing outside of school?
Sure. That's always an interesting question, and I think there's a range of answers that I will give, and part of that is dependent upon the grade level. So I'll take a 9th grade, because most of you will be interested in looking at 9th grade. Just to give you an idea that whenever I've done studies and I've done questionnaires of 9th graders over the years, the average amount of homework that they're getting a night is between 1.5 hours to 2 hours a night, or it doesn't have to be a night. So one of the things that we do and that I require for all of the 9th graders is that they're required to have a free block in their schedule. So that's a 45 to 50 minute block of time that is uncommitted during the day for classes. So you can imagine our athletes, and as you've heard from Krishna, the vast majority of our students are athletes. And before I go on, I'll say that our athletes actually have higher GPAs than our non-athletes. And so if you think of that athlete who, and I'm going to refer to a non-pandemic world here, because I'm fully committed that that's where we'll be in August, is that A student who has, say, an hour and a half to 2 hours of work outside of the classroom, and they're an athlete, they've got a free block during the day. So there's a 45-minute to 50-minute chunk of time where they can do some of that work. After school, when school gets out at 3 o'clock and practices start at 4:30, there's an hour and a half of time there where the majority of our athletes will go to the campus center, they'll get a snack and a drink, and they'll go and they'll do their homework. So in reality, that student, when they're done with their practices at 6:30 and they get home, they should have very little homework to do once they get home, if they've used that time efficiently. So I'll also be really transparent and say that this is a work in progress. So when our freshmen come in, they typically in the first quarter, they'll be socializing a lot during their free blocks. They're having a great time in the campus center and in the student center. And then suddenly second quarter starts and there's this massive turnaround. We see all these students are suddenly doing their work in the library during their free blocks. They're in the student center and around tables with their friends, but they're doing work. What happened in between? First quarter grades and parent-teacher conferences. And so there's this learned experience that the students go through in ninth grade where they see the importance of that time and the value of that. So there's built-in time that we do for students. We also, in the beginning of the school year, we have a program where we work with students, freshmen, in seminars. And so in those seminars, we talk about time management, we talk about learning support and learning resources. And we work with the students to make sure that they engage in office hours. We have office hours at the end of every day where teachers are available for kids to get help. But sometimes freshmen are shy to take advantage of that. And so our advisors help push them in that direction, and the teachers do as well. So there is a lot of support, but bottom line, we're trying to teach kids how to manage their time effectively and efficiently. It's not overwhelming unless you don't take advantage of these opportunities. And again, we guide the students in that. When you become a junior and a senior, that idea of time management is still there. And the reason that I like to talk about them separately is that in 9th and 10th grade, they're foundational years academically. You simply don't have as many academic choices in those two grades. In 11th and 12th grade, there's a lot of choices. And so sometimes students overload themselves because it's a choice. It's something that we guide them on, but it's also a learned experience. So what I find is that when we have what's called the drop add period, which is the first 10 days of every semester when students can move their classes around, there's a lot of juniors that started in those first 10 days and they realize, I just took on too much, and they reduce their load and they adjust their load. So again, all of this is building up to them being successful in college, where time management is critical, where picking the right load is critical as well.
Thanks, Gerald. Krishna, there's a question here about service learning, and I guess, I think embedded in this are some experiences with Project Week and international programs. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thanks, Lou. So service learning, right, has been a part of the graduation requirements and the experiential ed department for a while now here at Overlake. I believe Lou actually dropped the curricular overview there in the chat, so folks can take a look at that. However, being conscious of where we are in the world context, we have begun to shift and have actually become significantly more accommodating around the service learning opportunities. So one of the things that I've been really impressed by is the number of service opportunities our students have sought out and informed us of as a school. So our list continues to grow on a weekly basis of the service opportunities that students can engage in to collect hours towards graduation requirement. What I tend to see is that students seemingly exceed that expectation more often than not, because they see the value in the concept of service to others. And I think that's one of the important life lessons that a student at Overlake will get through the service learning program. As mentioned, we do have a project week here, which is an opportunity for students to engage in a typically non-traditionally academic focused activity where they're often engaging in an area of high interest or an experience such as international travel. So we have had trips to across the country domestically, as well as internationally, trips to Spain. There is a every other year trip to Cambodia, and in fact, another Overlake school that is over there that's run by our experiential ed director. So the opportunities for students to actually not just learn about different cultures, but actually engage with them and have that experience so that they can internalize the differences that are occurring across the world and increase their perceptual understanding of the world is really part and parcel of our experiential ed program. I think that covers it, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Krishna. Gerald, there's a question here about mental and emotional wellness of students and how we support them. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Sure. I mean, that's a great question. I was waiting for my little red live button to go on, so I hesitated there. So, in this pandemic world, it's obviously much more stressful and anxious than I think we've seen in previous times, in part because of the lack of human contact that our kids have. And so, I think that we've put into place a number of structures for kids to be supported in our current environment. But like I said, I don't really want to focus too much on the here and now, because I think once your kids come into school, we should be in a different place. And I fully anticipate, like I said, that we will be back on campus. And, at the very least, we would have, a hybrid model where we will have kids on campus and sort of half of the kids on campus at a time. We have 2 full-time personal counselors. We have 2 full-time learning specialists. We have 2 full-time college counselors. And we have a support system of people, all the adults on campus that have direct connections with kids on a daily basis. So we have considerable programming around social and emotional learning that is often led by our personal counselors, and it is they either are teaching some of that or working with our kids in that program, or it's being done in the advisory program. And remember, advisory is a group of 10 kids with an adult, with our trained teachers. And then there's also, we have clubs that are working to support our students and their lives in the social emotional range. And so we have the Alliance Club. Krishna has a number of other clubs that the students, including our student government, are directly involved in supporting our kids outside of the classroom. I think the other thing that's important is that where I've found some of the greatest opportunities for kids to support themselves is by being parts of teams and clubs. So, one of the questions that I saw came in prior to our get-together here was, what sort of a student is successful at Overlake? And I think the student who's successful is a student who's willing to take those easy risks of trying out a new team, getting into a club, getting involved, getting engaged. And those relationships really protect them from some of the challenges that they face as teenagers, is because they have a cohort of kids that they enjoy being around and adults that are supporting them throughout their time at Overlake.
Thanks, Gerald. Krishna, I think probably on a similar topic to actually what Gerald was just talking about, there's a question here about for a student that, I think Gerald mentioned the high participation rate, or maybe you mentioned the high participation rate in athletics, but for a student who doesn't sort of view themselves as an athlete, is there a place for them at Overlake? And then, if they want to try something, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, thanks, Lou. So yes, definitively, there's a place for students who are not necessarily the star athlete, right? And I think that that's a huge distinction. So we're really encouraging, right, like that culture of involvement. And so we're really looking for students who will take those risks to participate both on team, but also, maybe that's not necessarily your particular cup of tea, but you're really interested in opportunities for leadership. So our student government body, maybe it's activism. We have a very socially conscious, justice-oriented, inclusion-oriented student body who really has taken on an activist role, particularly in lieu of the events of this summer and sort of, the twin pandemics of obviously COVID, as well as sort of the racial injustice that has occurred in the country, and really been moved by how powerful and how empowered our students feel. So for the student who is perhaps maybe a little shy, I think that's part and parcel of becoming integrated into this community. There's a lot to talk about, when you're socially connected and you see your peers are engaged, you're also more likely to engage yourself, right? Like there are very few students, kind of, as I mentioned, who won't ultimately engage in a club or won't ultimately engage in a team. So I think part of the assets of being part of the Overlake community is that simply by being here, you're most likely to engage beyond simply the classroom, right? You are likely to see that this is what the other students do, and to maintain those relationships and to strengthen those bonds, because we also have this culture of relationships, that I also get engaged beyond the classroom, whether it's through clubs, whether it's through teams, athletic teams, right? And that could be on the non-varsity level, right? So we do encourage students who perhaps have always looked and said, I want to play basketball, but maybe that's not, I've never necessarily been really good. We take a really teaching and skills oriented approach to that. So there's a team for you here, right? We will take anybody who really wants to come in, or there's a club. As Lou mentioned, right, like how do I also get involved on things that are not necessarily athletically inclined? So we're really a student-oriented upper school. And so if you can think it, if you can dream it, and you're willing to share that that's an interest of yours, then there is an adult here who's going to help you figure out a way to make that happen. I think that's a really critical aspect of this community, and one of the reasons why I wanted to join it.
Thanks, Krishna. Gerald, there's a question here that I think is a good one. Given that Overlake has a middle school, and so a large percentage of our 9th grade class has been going to Overlake for a number of years. For those students who are coming in new as 9th graders, how do we bring them into the school? How do we integrate them into the community?
Thanks, Lou. And that's an excellent question. Before I answer that, I'm going to tag on to what Krishna said about the athletics and those who may, not feel as though they're an athlete. A lot of kids that we have don't feel as though they're athletes when they come to our school, and then they become athletes because they've decided to join a team, and they are called athletes. A little story. Krishna's new, so he didn't know this story, but a few years ago, we had a group of senior boys who had never played organized basketball in their lives. They decided they wanted to be a basketball team. And so honestly, they were not that good. But they were big and they were taller than, some of the other kids. We made a team. They were a C team. And we got a coach, and they played a season of C team basketball. They won a few, they lost a few. They were playing largely against 9th graders from other schools, because that's, who was often on a C team. They had the time of their lives. As alums now, they talk about that memory, of being together as friends, being on the C team, and giving it a shot. And that's what we love at Overlake. I went to a number of those games. They were great to watch. So the question about being new to Overlake, you're right, is that we have 64 kids in our 8th grade, and we have a 9th grade of between 80 and 85 kids. So automatically you'll see that we have 10, 11 new kids, places for new kids coming into our 9th grade. It's a natural entry point for us as a school. What you'll also recognize is that the transition from 8th to 9th is a normal transition year from school to school. So when we do have attrition at the school, that would be a normal place for it to happen. So, you know, in any given year, we have in the range of 20 to 25 new 9th graders in that grade. That is a fantastic number to totally change the culture of a grade and mix it up. So, you know, having that many new kids brand new into 9th grade is a joy for us. They're like the heroes, because all of those kids who come out of our 8th grade, they've had the same kids for 3 years. And they're looking, or 4 years, they're looking for new friendships, new interests, new kids, new dynamics. And so, you know, those newcomers that come in are really cherished by the folks that are in our current 8th grade. What we also do is we don't have like the new kids advisory, right? That doesn't happen. We make sure that in every advisory, there's 2 to 3 new kids in each of those, and then they mix in with our kids that are coming up from 8th grade. We also make sure that we break up any cliques or you know, groups of kids that have been together for, you know, in the same advisory throughout middle school, so that they're mixed up. And what again we'll find is that we as adults sometimes overestimate how quickly kids can become comfortable. An example of that is a few years ago that some really smart adults like myself decided, why don't we have some lunches for these new kids so that we can answer any of their questions and that we can help them integrate better into the community. So we had like lunches the first once a week for probably about a month. Well, we did that for about 2 weeks. And then we had a bunch of the new kids come to us and say, hey, we're not new kids anymore. We're Overlakers. We don't need this. And so we stopped doing it because that was how quickly that they felt that they didn't want to be segregated anymore as being, you know, new kids.
Thanks, Gerald. So we're getting some questions here, I think, about some of the academic departments and that kind of thing. And so I'll jump in here and say that you can find a lot of really good information about the curriculum on our website. So if you go to the website and you click under academics, there's a curriculum section. And so you can go department by department and see the course offerings. You can see the philosophies of each department, the course sequences. So there's a lot of really good information on the website. So I would encourage anyone who's watching this to check that out. But Gerald, I know for many families out there, you know, computer science is an interest. Can you talk a little bit about the computer science program?
Sure, be happy to. So, you know, the first thing that I'll point out is that if you probably have not been on campus, or maybe you don't know the fact that we have this brand new, beautiful computer science and math building going up. It's a fantastic facility. Christian and I actually had a tour of that building a week or so ago. It's about 4 weeks from being completed, 4 to 5 weeks. It will be able to extend our program in a variety of different ways, not only from the computer science perspective, but mathematics and science. We are really, really excited about that building. So a few things with Comp Sci. So, you know, we have everything from Intro to Comp Sci. Often that is a class that we have our 9th graders will start with. We also then, and that's a Python-based course, we move into, from there, the AP Computer Science course. And the AP Computer Science, we do get some 10th graders in there, 10th and 11th grade. If you've taken the intro course in 9th grade, then you have the background to take the AP course. That's a Java-based program. And then after that, we have a variety of opportunities for post-AP Comp Sci courses. So HDMI programming was one of those that we offer. And you know, what happens is that we can gauge those specific post-AP Comp Sci courses to the interests of the students, and what they want to go further in beyond the AP class, which is the Java-based course. You'll see some of those course descriptions on our website, as Lou pointed out, so feel free to take a look at that. But I don't want to stop just at that. I mean, the use of programming throughout our school is and the needs for programmers is also high. So an example of that is our robotics team. We have a really successful robotics team that involves programming, and we need to have successful programmers. I know that one of our biggest losses was our top programmer from last year, and she was a rock star in that program. But we always need more and more programmers to help out. The other thing is that that new facility is going to have what's called an idea lab, and one of the thoughts behind this idea lab, I was going to say idea behind the idea lab, is that you come up with a problem, and you then need to find a solution to it, right? And so the idea lab is a facility. It is built and structured for kids to explore. And so, I'll give you an example of something that I know that a student did last year. It was before the Idea Lab was there, but he designed a booth that would check your temperature just by walking up to it as you walked onto campus. That involved programming. And so there's a variety of opportunities beyond the classroom, and I want to emphasize that because I think it's really important. And we also have a Girls Who Code group, and again, there's always a need for students to help run that, and not only to help, they are the ones who run it. So again, lots of different opportunities beyond the classroom as well.
Thanks, Gerald. Let's see. So, we have a couple questions here asking about a little bit more about college counseling. I think that's always a topic that's on a lot of people's mind when they're thinking about high school. Can you dig in a little bit more into sort of what that process looks like for an Overlake student and the timeline?
Sure. And so my first point for you is that we go light in terms of college counseling at the 9th grade. And that may be a surprise to you or a shock to you, but we really want to focus on the next 4 years and making sure that kids recognize that they're in high school and the joys of being in high school. And we obviously work really hard to make sure that they are successful and prepared, that they have strong background in not only academics, but in areas to pursue beyond the academics. So we do have meetings with students. We do have our college counselors interact with our 9th graders, but we really don't want to focus on college in 9th grade. And I'd ask that you don't either. Oftentimes in 9th grade, that's a time to figure out what you're good at, what you're interested at, and what you won't, potentially start thinking about what you want to do in life and as a career. If you start on that focus of college too soon, it adds stress and anxiety, which is certainly not good for anyone. We have 2 full-time college counselors and a college counseling assistant. We have in the range of 90 to 100 colleges that visit our school each year. The real core of the work for our college counselors starts in 11th grade. They start meeting with every family and every student in 11th grade. Every grade level is between 75 and 80 kids, so that gives a load of a total of 80 kids per college counselor, which is a really good load for them. The programming is extensive. So not only is there a project week trips where we will take kids on college tours, but the different opportunities for parents to get information, whether it is general information about the college admissions process to detailed information about finances. Those are activities and events that are put on by our college counseling team. The students are well taken care of. And what you'll find is that one of the reasons for that is that not only do our college counselors guide them in their college process, but they're also their academic deans for those 2 years. So each of our students meets with their college counselor at the end of 10th grade to plan for 11th grade. And like I said, they're not only their college counselor, but they're their academic dean for the next 2 years. So that guiding process happens across those 2 years, and a deep relationship is built between the student and their college counselor.
Thanks, Gerald. I'll give you a break for a second here and ask Krishna a question. You know, I know, as Gerald said, you know, this year is an extraordinary year in a lot of ways, and so it's not necessarily the thing that we want to focus on in thinking about future years. But I guess, Krishna, I'm curious from your perspective, having come in the middle of this this COVID situation, can you talk a little bit about sort of what you've seen for how the school has handled the response to COVID, and really, I guess I'm curious what you see from a process standpoint that might carry us forward as an institution beyond the COVID years?
Yeah, thanks, Lou. It's a great question. You know, so in my experience, and for, you know, I didn't just join in August, right? So for everybody's information in regards to answering this question, one of the things that Overlake did as soon as I was hired, which was roughly like mid-March, is they invited me into the senior admin meetings so that I could be apprised of what was happening at school as Overlake Online had launched, and really kind of try to hit the ground running as much as is possible, being new in this entire context. What stood out to me right from the get-go was the thought, the intentionality that Overlake was using to try to deliver the best possible program given this really unfortunate set of circumstances that we're in, and a willingness to change so that the experience is continually improving, right? So some things that have stood out to me are the number of surveys, and it's not superfluous in that, like, you know, they just go out so that, you know, people feel heard, but the amount of attention that is had when students, families, faculty members, right, all the different constituents, alumni, respond to these opportunities for AMAs, which, you know, Ask Me Anythings, or really a dialogue, a town hall style event where the community is brought in to really talk about what the experience has been like, to provide constructive feedback, and then how that is curated and distilled into the really essential information so that programs are constantly evolving to meet the needs of the students during this particular experience. So for example, right, a piece that really stood out to me as we opened this beginning year was a real emphasis from the spring to this fall in regards to emphasizing the concept of community, right, beyond the classroom. Often a loud piece of feedback that we received was the classroom experience was really exceptional given the change in you know, learning environment, and they really appreciated the emphasis that, you know, remains on these cultures of involvement and culture of relationship, but wanting more community opportunities for the students, right? Particularly as this length of time that we are all virtual and not being able to personally connect. We don't have that individual in the room that we can reach out to and have that sense of connection. And so we have really been thoughtful about how to virtualize or create other opportunities, you know, where students can get that opportunity for community engagement. So for example, right at the beginning of the year, a tradition at Overlake is the senior barbecue. And the way that that typically occurs is that students, you know, in the senior class create signs, you know, on poster board and welcome all of the new members of the class to the school. But the day before that, they meet with the head of school and with Gerald and with myself and have a barbecue at the head of school's house. We turn that into a drive-through, a parent, right? Because I've seen some questions in regards to how are parents involved, helped cater that particular event and provide the food. So the food was there, the welcome virtually from the head of school was there. And then we even figured out a way to virtually provide students that opportunity to share those signs so that that experience could still be created, right? Because that tradition was important to Overlake and created the sense of community that is Overlake, right? We really talked about how to launch the clubs program in a virtual environment and where the opportunities were, both in athletics as well as in clubs. So, speech and debate and robotics are currently already in season practicing and even have tournaments already ongoing. On the athletics front, students are coming to campus Monday through Saturday, right, to actually engage in the practice period that WIA has created. So there is in-person engagement for the students. And even recently, we're launching essentially a retreats program. That's something where, again, at the beginning of the year, typically, when we're not in COVID circumstances and virtual, at the beginning of the year, every grade goes on a retreat so that, again, we can coalesce that group and go through that forming process of group dynamics that occurs early in the year. So we do that with intentionality. We are creating opportunities for that to occur on campus, again, because we're seeing, unfortunately, we haven't been able to switch to hybrid. The science and the data indicates that, but recognizing that there are ways to work within the science, right, limit the risk, and also create these opportunities for students to enrich the relationships that they have, strengthen the new bonds, particularly for ninth graders who are coming onto campus, and find that new student that they have only been seeing virtually say like, oh wow, look, you're taller than I expected, right? That tends to be a piece where we're just looking for every opportunity to recognize, right, that feeling socially comfortable at school is really correlated to succeeding in school. And so we recognize that and are constantly responding to and evolving to that regular feedback.
Thanks, Krishna. All right, we have a couple more questions here, and I want to try and get to as many of them as we can. Gerald, can you talk a little bit about the role of arts at Overlake?
Happy to. And I'm going to, again, add on to Krishna's that, one of the first things we did back in June, administratively, is we hired a medical doctor, and we have an epidemiologist who is a consultant for us. So, we are actively pursuing the science in this, and we have what we feel is outstanding folks to advise us. What Krishna didn't say is that he also had an internship with the CDC. That wasn't why we hired him, but he has some background there. And so, ask that question again, Lou. Sorry, I lost it.
The arts at Overlake.
Oh, the arts. Oh, God, the arts are critical. They're huge at our school. So facilities are fantastic. You'll see that we have our Fulton Performing Arts Center, and it is one of the most active places on campus. Arts are required. We are a school that believes that every student can be successful in the arts, and so 2 years of arts is a requirement. Every year we put on probably in the range of 3 different upper school performances, productions. And what's important for you to note is that for every one of those productions, we will close our classes at the upper school at 1 o'clock after lunch, and everybody goes in and watches the production, because it's so important for our students to see their classmates on stage and see what they are. It's one of the only times they'll have a full house of 350 to 400 people for their production. They are award-winning productions. Our kids every year get awards for the work that they do, and these are external awards, not the ones that we personally would give. Our music groups. My son Connor graduated in 2013. He was part of the jazz band for 4 years at Overlake. That's our competition band. That's our band that travels as well. And not only do they do performances, they go to Disneyland to do performances there, but they go to senior centers and do performances there. While it was open, they went to Tula's and did performances there. So again, fantastic groups of musicians. Similar with our orchestra. The visual arts, I mentioned, every year we have, at least one kid who goes to RISD, which is, one of the top programs in the nation for visual arts. It is an exceptionally strong program, and there's a lot of different electives for students to sort of stretch and grow in their arts. And the kids that are really strong in the arts are really, really respected. We have a lot of opportunities for them to display their work around campus in our different buildings. And kids look up to that work. It's as admired, if not more so, than some of the work that some of our kids outside of the arts do.
Thanks, Gerald. So I think the question that we'll kind of end on, and then I have a few things just to wrap up, is, the families who are going through the process this year have, if they're here in the Seattle area, they've got a lot of really great school choices available to them: public, private, independent, faith-based. And so as you think about Overlake, and you think about Overlake within the market of schools in this area, what do you think are some of the things that make Overlake special, make Overlake a little different from some of their other choices?
Great question. Every school is gonna say they have outstanding academics. No one's gonna say, oh, we have average academics. So you're certainly going to hear that. And I think I will answer this in part based upon my own experiences as a parent, having had kids go through the school. But I'd fail if I didn't mention just the physical facilities that we have, which if you haven't been on campus, it's an incredible location, incredible site. And the fact that we have multiple buildings, I often refer to it as like a small college feel. You walk around the campus and, kids are moving from building to building after every lesson. And there's a feel about it. You feel differently as you are walking outside and going from place to place. The thing that I think has always struck me about Overlake, and what I'm really quite proud about, is the fact that we really, really focus on kids' passions. And when I mentioned my son who was in the jazz band, he was not always a bass player, right? He was a guitar player in middle school, and he had a teacher that basically encouraged him and pushed him. He was very shy and pretty inward. I would not refer to him as a leader, as he was, and I'm the guy teaching the leadership class. Wouldn't refer to him as a leader as he was, in 9th and 10th grade, but he had the support of people around him, and pushed him to be who he became. And so one of the things that he became as a senior was he was the section leader for the bass players in the jazz band. He was the leader there. He became the captain of the cross country team. He would have never been that, I think, in a larger environment. Certainly it may have been the case in some different environment. My daughter similarly grew up to become one of the captains of the women's ultimate team. She went on to be the captain of the ultimate team at her university. And that was again with someone who pushed her. She was in a science class in 9th or 10th grade. And she was doing okay in the class. And she had the teacher who came to her and individually and said to her, Micah, I think you can actually do a lot better than what you're doing. You have the skills to really be successful in this field. I have a lot of faith in what you can do. She is now a research scientist at the University of Washington, and she talks to me about that experience and the importance that meant to her in her education. So you've got people here that really care about kids and actually give them opportunities. You're not going to find a lot of schools that the entire club program, every one of those 41 clubs that Krishna mentioned, is led by students. It's not the adults who come and make up these clubs. It's the students who do that because they have those passions. They then gather their friends together to create a viable club. And then we help by assigning a teacher to support them who has a common interest. but it's really the students who are the ones who push for that. And again, that goes to that passion I talked about earlier, is that we support those as much as we, if not more than supporting the academics. And I think that that really plays a big role in differentiating us from other schools. The passions that my kids developed at Overlake, they still have. My son is now a senior systems analyst working in Denver. He still goes to jazz clubs, right? Because he developed that passion through that teacher who guided him. My daughter's not playing Ultimate anymore because in a pandemic, that's not happening.
Thanks, Gerald. So with that, I want to thank Gerald, and I want to for joining us this evening. And for those of you who are out there, and if you liked what you heard today, I would encourage you to start the application process. We manage our application through Ravenna. It's an application system that many of the local schools use, so there's some efficiencies there for you as a prospective family. It also gives you the ability to sign up for more of our events. So we will have additional of these OWLS talks, and you can find those and register for them on our website. But for many of the other things, and Gerald mentioned our campus, and so one of the things we're doing this year is since we can't have regular campus tours, we're doing some drive-through open house events, and we've got another one coming up in November and then December. So if you want to sign up for those kinds of events, you can do that through your Ravenna profile. As always, if you have questions about the school or the admission process, please feel free to reach out to us in the admission office. That's what we're here for. If we don't have the answer, we can put you in touch with someone who does have the answer. So with that, I'll say thank you for joining us tonight, and have a good evening. Take care.